Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the US Chess Championships. It is the third round of action, and as always, we have games from the women's side as well as the open side. We have Hans Niemann returning to over-the-board play. He had a wild game today against Grandmaster Sam Shankland. We now have a new face of chess, which is a very exciting update. Yes, a new face. You think Magnus, Hans, Gotham, Hikaru. No, I would never, ever say that I am the face of chess, but maybe for the online content, sure, but not over-the-board competitive play. No! You will actually see that we do, in fact, have a potential nominee for New Face of Chess. I have 5 games. I hope you can give me the time to take you through these games. Apologies for not making a recap yesterday. I was very tired. I hope that's a sufficient enough response. Oh, look, we got the little Chesley. You really should check out Chesley. I'm telling you, a lot of people who have bought my old courses have migrated over to Chesley for free. They love it. It's such a nice way to dive into my courses, and we're only building more features. Obviously, listen, we got the chess.com down there. Has been there since day one. All my videos have been made on chess.com. Anyway, I wanted to put this right over here. I could always give it a pat on the head. Anyway, here we go. We have a game from the women's side. This was a wild game. Now, you wouldn't think it was a wild game from the opening. The opening is called the Quiet Italian. All right, doesn't like to yell, doesn't use too many hand gestures. Am I stereotyping? H3, A6, and just a normal, long, developing game, right? Wrong. D5. All right, Jennifer attacking in the center of the board. Tatev playing pawn takes D5, knight G3, and then this is an indication of hostilities, knight to H4. But what's funny is that in this position, Black was actually doing completely fine. Black can, of course, rotate the knight around. Black can, but the position is dead equal, 0-0-0. This move completely takes the eye off of the H4 square. Now, obviously, Jennifer, you knew what she was doing, because after knight H4, she played back to E6 and was like, you're just not going to go there, and this is my way of trying to make progress in the position. But then White played queen H5. And you know, now White is looking at bishop takes H6 and knight to F5 and then a queen back to G4 and then maybe D4 and the bishop activates onto the knight. And, you know, you can go knight F6 here, but I'm going to back up. And now White is actually threatening a massive winning of material. For example, rook D8. White is probably threatening bishop takes H6, I have to say. And then pawn takes, there is queen F6. And if bishop D5, I just block with the knight. So the bishop tries to boot the knight, but now it sort of seems like it's all going awry. All right, and it looks like White is just making some good progress here. If bishop E3, White is going to go here and here, bringing yet another party to the attack. Of course, the computer is a scumbag, right? The computer looks at this and is like, nope, this is equal. But you know, we just look at Stockfish like a tantrum throwing adult. Not even a tantrum throwing kid. Like when a kid throws a tantrum, you're like, yeah, it's kind of expected. But when you see these videos of like adults just like going completely nuts in grocery stores, that's maybe my favorite part of social media. There's a lot of negatives to social media, but there's obviously some good things. I really enjoy that now we can document when like an adult just has a meltdown because they won't get like a refund or yeah, it's so funny to me. I love that stuff. F5. All right, Jennifer is fighting back. But the problem with playing F5 here instead of first taking and playing F5, right, taking on E3 and then playing F5 is that White can do this. And the funny thing is, if Black plays rook A7, that rook just is garbage, right? Like that rook will need at least another move to get back. And in that moment, White will seize the initiative. The knight goes out this way, hitting the queen, and now White takes over with D4 and rook E5 and so on. So Jennifer just totally misevaluates here. She had to take the bishop first, I guess. She had to take the bishop first. And despite F5, you know, rook G3 looking a bit scary, it actually does look justifiably scary because this is a very big attack. After rook G3, Black can just play king H8, which is sort of a cold shower. And there's nothing White can do here. White has to still go here, but the attack is not there. Compare that to what happens in this game, this very simple difference. Well, the difference is that now rook E5 comes and the queen is tied to the defense of the rook. Just the rook shifted and can't guard the rook anymore. So White wins a pawn, but good lord, does it get worse than that. So White loses a knight, but Black is unable to guard this knight. Right, so if Black plays something like king F7 here, White will go D4. Knight f5. I mean, just the combination of moves. Because again, black is playing with no rook. That's really what this just comes down to. g5. Jennifer tries to fight back, but it's just not enough. I mean, she's just not enough. She's still down a knight, but the attack roars forward. Finally, the bishop is activated. And again, black is just playing with no rook. Rook finally makes it back, but by this point, not only has white won back a sufficient amount of pawns, white also has a devastating attack on the king. Now, you will notice what went wrong here. Actually, in this position, bishop h7 was not right. White had to play queen h7 here and then rook to e5. And the idea of rook to e5 is rook f5. Right now, there's obviously some bishop e6 maybe to defend, but then there's bishop f5. Like, Tatev, even in the attack, played it slightly inaccurately. And here, actually, if Jennifer had found rook e8, she would have potentially saved this game. The idea being to lose the knight, but to get a potential perpetual or just winning a lot of white's pawns. So she actually could have fought back for one move, but I think she just kind of surrendered to the fact that the position was lost. And now it certainly is. And she resigned in this position. A very, very powerful attack by Tatev, who actually beats the perfect score first place leader. So Jennifer Yu was 2 out of 2. Now she goes down. Jennifer has a lot of decisive games. I don't think she's very prone to draws. So interesting to see what happens there. Tatev gets a very important win for the standings. Now, I have some games from the open side. Sam Shankland versus Hans Niemann. This was a very fun one. It began with a Nimso, and it was all theory. All of this has been played like over 1,000 times. In this position, white retreats the queen to c2, white retreats the queen to c3, and white retreats, well, this is not really a retreat, but sort of goes out to a4. In this position, Sam Shankland played a move that no human has ever played before. Now, maybe like online, because online there's many, many more games, but he plays queen c1. That move has never happened before. Ever. There's a couple of interesting ideas here. So, first of all, there's an idea to put the queen on f4, which is just totally unique. There's also a potential idea, I'm not saying he's going to do this, but like to sacrifice. I'm just saying it's a vague idea. It's not good right now because the move knight h7, but still white can, maybe play h4 and then rook h3, rook g3. Like, for an average player, this is very scary for black. Not for US Championship, because they can sort of understand that, right? They can get this. But there's another sneaky idea here. So Hans, after like 40 minutes of thought, plays bishop e7. And now Sam plays h4. Now h4 is a crazy move. That's wild. So this is some crazy prep. Hans here plays knight c6. Now again, apparently Hans had to play either h6, bishop h4, or c5. This is what my computer was saying. Like, you got to fight back against the center. You can't really worry about dc5. You can even gambit a pawn and try to create counterplay while down a pawn. This is hard to do when you're playing against prep. But the way that Hans plays this is he actually doesn't get that comfortable of a position. Like, Sam is clearly better. He has the bishop pair, more center space, and he has a potential target on d6. And just, again, from the opening, it really seems like the opening was a massive success. And Sam actually played, I would imagine, about 18 moves of prep here, where he is just better. He is better because the pawns are split. The c-file right now is very good pressure. This bishop is very passive. Potential to attack the king. Potential to get to all three of these weaknesses. So let's see how he's going to do it, right? He plays rook c3. Hans goes for a rook trade. And he trades all the rooks off. Now, you could argue here this was not right. Like, maybe Sam shouldn't have done this. Maybe Sam only should have traded only one pair of rooks. But the truth is that black was going to fight back on the c-file at some point. So basically, it seems like this is the way to defend the position. And here, b4, like, so far Sam is playing a perfect game. Everything he's doing is correct. b5 is even a nice move just to completely restrict black. King g7, king e3. Now, if I was white here, I would have played h5. I'm not so sure why Sam didn't do this. Maybe it's a fortress. Maybe he was a little bit concerned that, like, okay, he completely restricts black's pieces on every square, but now he can't make any forward progress, right? That's the other thing. Like, you got to win this game somehow. So, for instance, if you are able to somehow make progress, that is one thing. But if black just sort of sits back and doesn't let you get anywhere, and there's h5, right? a4, but now what? All right, where's the breakthrough? And Hans immediately fights back with f6, g4, and white gets a nice position, but he can now almost never make progress. And if Hans defends correctly, which he does, this far, we'll have another stage of the game coming up. It's going to be really tough to win, but bishop g8 was a step in the wrong direction. Here, Hans had to play a5. See, if Hans successfully plays the move a5, it's actually a fortress. If black plays en passant, then after knight a6, the fortress is still strong. Yes, there is a move like bishop d3, but there is knight c5. And you're always just in time. And then knight b7. And white just can't do anything. But Hans goes wrong. And suddenly, white is making some more progress, even completely restricting black. The pawn on a6. Now, this is a massive improvement for white. Sam trying. They make it to move 40. Bishop e2. He's looking for the way through. King e3. Knight d4, centralizing. He's looking to break through on that. Look at this. Hans just correctly evaluating that this is a draw. And Sam tried. You know, he tried his darndest. He trades the knights. He looks for the breakthrough, but there's just nothing there. Black just doesn't have to do anything. And Hans did not have a good position for 57 moves of this game, but he draws. All right? And the game was 57 moves. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes that happens. I mean, maybe Sam shouldn't have rushed here with the move a6, but I don't know. It seemed like despite white having a good position throughout the game, he did not have a chance to win the game, which is wild. I mean, maybe there was one moment. But yeah, he detonates this prep bomb, you know, and it works, but it also doesn't because he's unable to win. Top-level chess is really hard. Fabiano Caruana versus Dariusz Swiercz. Swiercz was a player from Poland for many years, I think born and raised. And this game was in anti-Berlin. I think he came to the States maybe 5-6 years ago, something like that. We have an anti-Berlin, something that we have seen many times in the candidates tournament. And this setup played by black is very aggressive, as you can see. a5, disallowing white to do much. Knight goes behind the queen. Fabi goes for a little gander there. And then look at what Fabi's doing. I think Fabi just wanted to go horseback riding in this game. Knight g5, knight f3, knight h4, just galloping in. Takes on e6, knight f5, knight g3 back. Yo, how many knight moves in a row was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 horsey moves in a row. Now, in this position, white wants to play f4 and attack and open up the bishop and attack on the f-file. But if you do that, you would be blundering your king. By the way, I personally think you should be able to hang your king in chess. I think if you play this move online and then you lose, like, that's it. You know what I'm saying? I don't think this move should be illegal. Then, of course, there should be the question of what happens if your opponent doesn't take your king. Maybe they lose because they missed that they could take your king. I don't know. Something like that. Something weird. I don't know. I just don't think that we should be preventing you from making illegal moves. How else are you going to learn? Especially when you're young. Oh, I got to rub my nose. Little interlude. Queen e6, queen g5, and now look at it. Fabi, if you wanted to go to c1, why not just do it right away? I'm joking, obviously, but I mean, it's just funny. Like, big maneuvers in this game. Big maneuvers. King h1, bishop back to d6. And, of course, he played king h1 to play f4, and now Dariusz plays bishop d6 to prevent f4. And Fabi doesn't have a whole lot, but the move a3, closing the queen side down like this, and then trying to do this with c5, and then putting this knight on d4. Like, you see Dariusz here getting very hostile. And Fabi kind of goes back. And, yeah, black is better. Like, over the first 25 moves, I would say Dariusz is outplaying Fabiano, which is pretty wild, right? Queen f7, queen d2, knight d4. And taking on d4. So Fabi gets the knight versus the bishop. The knight is on its home square. And we begin the next phase of the game. c4. Ooh. Okay, en passant. And I mean, Dariusz is just not going away. 34 moves into this game, he has completely restricted the white position. His rooks are staring down on the F and G files, ready to attack. Knight e3, queen b5, but now the knight is again getting back into the game. The knight gallops all the way out from h4 to g2, e3, and c4. That's the benefit of the knight, kind of. Rook e8. Now we're looking to the time control. All right, we're looking to the time control. Queen d5 back. Maybe Dariusz just thinking they're going to repeat moves, but Fabi sends us into a heavy piece endgame. Brings the rook. brings the queen out to a5. And this is where the level difference is between Dariusz and Fabiano. Dariusz, 26, like 50, I believe, 2660. Very, very strong grandmaster. But guys like Fabiano, who have been around the block, who have played at the most elite levels, who have played at the World Championship, they have an extra gear. And that gear goes 40, 50, 60 moves deep. You could be accurate for 37 moves. They're going to be accurate for 38 or 50. Okay? And as we get into this endgame, Dariusz just can't seem to adjust to the demands of the position. Like, instead of playing passively, he plays aggressively. But the problem is, in all of these calculations, Fabi is a brilliant calculator. All this queen a2 stuff, he's going to take on e5. He's going to get to this king way before this pawn becomes a problem. And after rook d3, queen c7, and this queen trade, Fabi just stabilizes and looks to try to win this rook endgame. Rook b1, rook b2, but pawn is won. And now here come the 50s, right? This is the 50th move of the game. All right, look at this tension among rooks. All this, rook f4, gf4, and Dariusz just accidentally trades into a totally losing endgame. And I think he missed an idea here, which was to bring these pawns together, preventing the king forward. But it's worse than that. It's like, if you ever play the move h5, I'm going to play rook e2. And then if you play h4, I'm going to play rook e4. I'm just going to get out of the pin. And then I'm going to play e7. And if you play king f6, I'm going to play check here, e7, and I'm going to win. So it takes him 60 moves, but Fabiano finds the right winning idea, and Dariusz goes down. Dariusz played a great game, but the problem for him was that he was playing Fabiano. So Fabiano wins. He is now tied for first place. And I have a couple more games to show you. A Wonder Liang versus Alexander Lenderman. So A Wonder said something really funny. So he goes to University of Chicago. That wasn't the funny thing that he said. I believe that's where he goes to university. A Wonder was always a strong young player. I've played him like 2 or 3 times over the board. I actually beat him once, but then the next, I think 2 times we played, he ripped me limb from limb, basically. And A Wonder's in college, which means he's not doing a whole lot of chess, but he's still a 2600 grandmaster. And he said, yeah, you know, I was out of theory on move 3, which is just bonkers. He was like, yeah, I didn't think he was going to play the Slav or something. So, and of course he knows the theory of the Slav, but he doesn't know it at the US championship level. So he decided to just play. Just played queen c2. Didn't know anything about it. Fianchettoed his light squared bishop, you know, developed his knight, played the move a4 to potentially bring out a5 and weaken the b6 square, or play a5 himself. And yeah, I mean, I would love if I could play the US championship despite, you know, knowing no openings. I know too many openings. And c5. The game got pretty sharp. It became this middle game position with an imbalanced pawn structure, and black's piece is mildly restricted. Queen a4, cd, cd, and the following position. And the position's relatively balanced, but here Lenderman decides to take on a5, which is a very big decision because white doesn't actually have to take. White can leave these pawns here because they're sort of bad, and then threaten rook b1, rook c7, and so on. And so here Lenderman plays e5, a very aggressive move, sacrificing a pawn in order to glue the bishop with the a5 pawn. Very interesting. A Wonder plays e6, sacrificing the pawn right back. Now, it's not quite a sacrifice because rook c7, and that wins for white. So black plays knight c5, white takes on f7 check, and then trades the queens. So A Wonder goes for this endgame, very interesting endgame, with a 4-on-2, just a straight up 4-on-2, and a passed e-pawn. But black has 2 pawns on the queen side. But whose 2-pawn advantage is felt more? White's 4-on-2, or black's doubled a-pawn walking directly into this? And if you play a4, there's going to be rook c4, right, and bishop d6 to remove more defenders. Obviously, white's advantage is more felt. How is he going to make it work? Well, first he's going to coordinate the rook and the bishop and hit g7. Then he's going to go bishop b6. And he just doesn't give Lenderman any time to set up. And Alex gets to play the move a4, sacrificing and then replacing the pawn. But now he's a pawn down, and white still has all the advantages of his position. And the craziest part is, remember how I told you that the 4-on-2 was going to be like felt later on in the game? The 4-on-2 never even had a chance to be felt because Black's pieces just sort of got caught out in the open. And Awonder does a very nice job here of totally paralyzing the black position. Bishop d4, you take on b3, I take the rook, and that's it. Black resigned. I mean, it's just incredible. Like, this very interesting idea here from Awonder, like, not taking the pawn back on a5, bringing the rook, and then right here doing something very interesting, sacking his pawn, sacking in quotes, and the utmost important move here, queen a2, trading down into this winning queenless endgame. Black plays knight b3 here, white just plays rook c7 and wins. By the way, rook gets out of danger. If queen to d5, there must be something winning. Probably just e4, some sort of move. And then if black plays queen e6, you probably have knight g5. Yeah, and then the queen just cannot defend the knight anymore. So queen a2, super interesting idea, just to trade the queen. And then he just made it look so easy. I mean, his pieces just sort of coordinated so beautifully. And a very nice win from him. Doesn't know his openings past move 3, still wins the game at the US Championship. We are all Awonder Liang. And the final game that I have for you is the game between Christopher Yu and Elshan Moradiabadi. So we have a Queen's Gambit declined, we have a Catalan, we have the immediate capture on c4, bishop g2, and this move c5. Very forcing line. Now, queen a4, bishop d7. I am actually kind of shocked that in this position, Elshan did not play the move b5. I mean, I always thought b5 was a very natural move, but instead of that, he plays bishop c6, which is also a line, trying to put the bishop on the same diagonal as the light-squared bishop. And basically, he wants the pawn back now, and Chris is like, no. And Elshan's like, no, really, I insist. I want to move my bishop and get the pawn. Chris is like, no. And Elshan's like, no, Chris, please, let me get the pawn back. And Chris is like, all right, fine, but I get to play b5. And now what Chris has here is A, B versus A. That's literally what he has. He's like, c-pawn is now no longer a factor, okay? So we are probably going to see the move a4. There it is. And now black plays the move castles, and we see the move a5. And the game is almost playing itself, right? Just go back to the beginning. Christopher Yu plays a Catalan, gives a check, wins the pawn, takes a pawn, and then he's like, nope, 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 only on my terms, b5. And then walks the pawn up the board. Now, in the Catalan, if the queen can survive so far out in the open, it's going to be a really big problem. A really, really big problem for black. And the funny thing is, he can get rid of the queen with knight b6. So the move a4, a5 did not prevent knight b6 because there would have been this, right? And if you were to take the queen here, this is actually a devastating loss for white, I feel like. The knight taking this pawn. Chris doesn't seem to think so. Chris did seem to think so and kind of agrees with me. Stockfish doesn't because Stockfish is just a scumbag. So Stockfish here finds the move knight e5, just straight up losing a knight, but seeing the bishop. So bishop g2, and now knight takes on c4, and the pawns will keep rolling. But this is just not so human to give up your Catalan bishop and just come back and play like this. Just knights, basically saying like these pawns are going to be good in the long run. This is just not too normal. I mean, it's much more normal to keep your Catalan bishop, which is the pride of the position, bring this bishop out of danger, and now bring the queen back. But Chris messed up here a little bit. Queen c4 was not the best move. It does seem like he should have put a knight on c4 somehow, in some way, instead of a queen, because now Elshan plays this move, and this is not what white wants. White does not want this at all. As you can see, the advantage suddenly plummets. So knight a3, knight e4, and the pieces are sort of swirling. Look at this, bishop d5. Whoa, a little bit too much counterplay here for Chris. Queen c1, well, the counterplay is for his opponent, but in terms of his position. Now Elshan is getting real active. He's basically completely made these pawns useless because they're not walking up the board anymore, and this pawn is about to march down. So knight e5, hits this, looking to go here, bishop hits the knight. Knight back to c5, taking this pawn, but taking this bishop. And now Chris uncorks knight to d6. I don't need to take your bishop because your queen is hanging. And if you take here, look at this. This, that, and that. The best move here for black, knight b7, which attacks the queen and attacks the bishop. White here would play queen to d2, hitting the knight and defending the bishop. knight d6, queen d6, and now this is hanging and this is hanging. And of course, this endgame is completely lost for black, who has to deal with an extra pawn and 2-on-1. So what happens? All right, knight b7 is still a good move, but you don't have to go through what I just said. Black can play knight c2 here. That's the best move for black. But that aside, Alshan plays knight b3. And here's something really funny happens. Chris Yu gives up the rook. For a brief moment, Chris Yu is down 7 points of material. But he is attacking a rook, a knight, and a bishop. There is 14 points of material capturable in this position. Isn't that funny? That's so funny to me. Which of these pieces do you need to take? Which of these pieces is the most active? Yes. Did you think that one? No? Doesn't matter. Bishop takes b4. The rest of the pieces are scattered in corners. Bishop back to a8. And now he's like, I'm going to take the knight. I got 6 points of material back, and your rook is still hanging. And I'm going to go take it. And now, after all that, white is up a pawn. So what does white do? He's going to push. He's going to defend his light squares. He's going to lose a pawn. But here comes knight c4. Knight back to e3. And at some point, that pawn on b6 is going to go to b7. And if it doesn't go to b7, he might win this game in even more spectacular fashion. Like this. Queen takes a8! Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Rook a8, b7, and rook c8 check. Christopher Yu take a bow. Tied for first place after 3 rounds of action. Lost to Hans Niemann. Beat Wesley So. Beats Alshan Moradiabadi. And that is why he is the deserving 100 faces of today's thumbnail. I hope you enjoyed the recap. I will see you for round number 4. Get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.